The mirror cracked. The jukebox played a song no one requested. And when he entered the studio, she was already waiting. With a secret that could destroy everything. He hadn't been back in decades. Not since he promised never to return. But that morning, something was off. The mirror split straight down the middle. The old song, their song, started playing in a building no one had touched in years. And when he walked through those studio doors, he saw a woman he'd never met. Holding something that belonged to him. Something that should have been impossible. She says they've met before. She says she knows what he did that night. And what she reveals next could shatter everything he thought he'd buried for good. Some stories don't begin with love, they begin with a lie. Earl Madison was 78 years old when his wife of 52 years passed away. She died on a Tuesday. Just like that. No drawn-out battle. No tearful hospital goodbyes. She fell asleep with her knitting needles still in her lap and a Sinatra record playing low in the corner. Earl found her the next morning. Coffee brewed. Toast never eaten. She was still warm. That was the worst part. Still warm. It had been 2 years. He hadn't danced since. He hadn't smiled properly either. People had tried. Neighbors. His daughter from Denver. The pastor. The vet. None of it stuck. Not until the call came. Mr. Madison. The voice was soft, like crushed velvet. We're hosting a commemorative evening at the studio, free for seniors. For couples and widowers too. He almost hung up. Almost. But something in her voice, maybe the warmth, maybe the way she paused after the word widower, made him wait. And then he said, "What time?" The studio was just as he remembered. Maple floors still shined. Old trophies glinted along the top shelf. The air smelled like lavender, wood polish, and nostalgia. There were couples there already. Shuffling feet. Nervous chuckles. And then he saw it. The old jukebox. It hadn't worked in years. But tonight, the glow behind the glass was alive. Earl. He turned. She was standing near the mirror wall. White scarf. Gray hair pulled into a careful twist. Eyes that looked like they'd seen heartbreak and kept going anyway. "I'm June," she said, stepping closer. "You look like someone who used to love dancing." "I did," Earl said quietly. "Then I didn't." She nodded like she understood far more than she let on. "I came here with my husband," she said. "Every Wednesday for 40 years." Earl's heart stalled. June looked away, her smile brittle. "He passed last spring. Cancer. Quick. Cruel. Silence. I told myself I'd never come back," she whispered. "But you did. So did you." They didn't dance right away. They stood by the jukebox. Talked about the old instructors. The disco night that ended in a blackout. The time someone brought a piglet in a bow tie. June laughed at that. Earl felt his chest expand. A new laugh. It cracked through the cobwebs. And then the music changed. Track 7. Moon River. Earl froze. June's smile faltered. "My husband loved this one," she said. "So did my wife." A silence hung between them, heavy and aching. But not cold. Then Earl held out his hand. "May I?" June looked at it for a long moment, then placed her hand in his. "Only if you remember how to lead." He smiled. "Ma'am, I led her through 6 decades of weddings, funerals, and grandchildren. I think I can manage one song." As they danced, slow, swaying, no fancy footwork, others watched. Not because they were graceful. Not because they were elegant. But because grief had made them weightless. And love had made them remember how to move. When the music ended, June didn't let go. Neither did he. And that's when the lights flickered. A single bulb above the jukebox sparked, dimmed, and then came roaring back to life. In its brief blackout, someone had slipped a letter into the machine. Red envelope. Earl spotted it first. "Do you see that?" June followed his gaze. They walked over. He pulled the envelope out. No name. No stamp. Just a gold seal. Inside, a photo. 2 teenagers. Laughing. Spinning in the studio. A date scribbled on the back, June 3, 1961. It wasn't them. But it was someone. And tucked behind the photo, a message in elegant handwriting. "You think time steals love. But sometimes, time is just the hallway where it waits." Earl's hand trembled. June touched his arm. And somewhere, through the speaker crackle and the ghosts of footsteps on old wood, the jukebox played on. The studio emptied out slowly that night. One couple at a time. Earl and June stayed behind. Neither said it out loud, but both felt it. Something about the photograph in that red envelope, something wasn't right. The paper was too fresh. The ink too sharp. It hadn't been sitting in that jukebox for decades. Someone had just put it there. June turned the photo over again. That date, June 3, 1961, stung like a memory neither of them could place. "Do they look familiar to you?" she asked. Earl squinted. "No. But I've seen that background. That corner by the trophy case. Same angle I took a picture of my wife at when we were courting. Right before I asked her to marry me." June's voice caught. "My husband proposed to me here too. Same year. Different month." A silence fell between them, heavier than before. Then June stepped toward the front desk. Maybe someone left a name. A clue. She pulled out the old guest registry, still a battered spiral notebook. She flipped page after page. There, on a yellowed sheet dated June 3, 1961. Earl Madison, 1 guest. Margaret Madison, soon to be. But just beneath that, June Halperin, 1 guest. Walter Halperin, first dance. She gasped. Earl. He was already reading it. Already shaking his head. "We were here the same night." Neither of them remembered seeing each other. But then again, it had been packed that night, some charity ball for veterans. Dozens of couples. Music and wine and a band from New Jersey playing Swing Too Loud for anyone to really talk. And now, more than 60 years later, the two of them were meeting again. Not for the first time. For the second. Back at the booth near the jukebox, Earl pulled out his wallet. From a worn slot, he slipped a photo. It was wrinkled and faded, but still clear, Margaret in a navy dress, her hair curled just so, eyes closed mid-spin. June stared. She was beautiful. She was everything. June hesitated. Then reached into her purse and pulled out her own photo. Walter in a cream suit, bowtie crooked, standing near the same mirror wall from the studio. Smiling. Holding a drink. Half posed. Earl leaned closer. His brows furrowed. "What's that?" He pointed at the edge of the frame. A blurred figure. Someone mid-step. Out of focus but still visible, tall, gray suit, dark hair. It was him. A younger Earl. Frozen forever in the background of June's photograph. He blinked. That can't be." June's voice was barely a whisper. "It is." He sat back, stunned. "We were in the same picture." Neither of them spoke for a long time. The jukebox played an old Ella Fitzgerald song. The lights flickered again, just for a moment. Then something strange happened. The envelope on the table moved. Just slightly. Enough to catch Earl's eye. Draft, he muttered, but there was no window open. No door ajar. He picked it up again. Felt around inside. A second slip of paper had been tucked between the folds. He pulled it free. Same elegant handwriting. It read. He asked her to dance. But she never heard him. The song ended before she turned around. Earl looked up. What the hell does that mean? June stood slowly. I think. She turned to face him. I think it means we were supposed to meet. Back then. Earl shook his head. But we did meet. Just not. No, June stepped closer. You don't understand. That was the night Walter asked me to dance. But I almost didn't say yes. I was looking for someone else, a man by the punch bowl. Gray suit. Dark hair. I thought he smiled at me. Earl's mouth was dry. I did. She blinked. I did smile at you, Earl whispered. I wanted to ask you to dance. But Margaret grabbed my hand before I could move. June stared at him like she'd just seen a ghost. You were the one. They left the studio together that night, walking slow along the empty street. The moon hung low like a knowing eye. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. At his car, Earl turned to her. Do you believe in second chances? June smiled, just a little. I believe sometimes, the first one never finished. That night, as Earl lay in bed, the mirror above his dresser cracked again. A tiny hairline fracture. Right through the center. But this time, he didn't mind. He turned out the light. And dreamed of a girl in a blue dress who never turned around. 3 days later, a storm rolled in. Thick clouds crawled low across the sky, swallowing the sun. Earl had always said the weather could smell memory. And this one smelled like regret. June sat alone in her apartment, fingers tracing the lip of a cold teacup. She hadn't slept well since that night at the studio. She couldn't. The envelope still sat on her mantel, the photo of the two strangers tucked inside it, her, him, and history folding back on itself like pages stuck together. She didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know what to do with them. She liked Earl. Maybe even more than liked. But she'd made peace with the past. Or so she thought. That was before the knock came. 3 sharp raps. No doorbell. No footsteps fading. She opened the door. No one. Just an envelope. This one wasn't red. It was bone white. No stamp. No return address. Just her name. June Halperin. Written in her husband's handwriting. And the date? April 9th, 2025. Yesterday. But Walter had been dead for nearly a year. Her knees gave out. Inside, she opened it with shaking fingers. The paper inside was clean, crisp. Not aged. Not yellowed. It read. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But someone needs to tell you the truth. That night at the studio, 1961, I saw him. I saw the way you looked at him. You never saw me watching. But I did. And I knew. You chose me, June. But part of your heart stayed with him. And I tried. I really tried to be enough. But there's something else you need to know. About Earl. About that night. Ask him what he remembers, about the fire. I never had the courage to tell you what I saw. There was no signature. No closing line. Just a memory lit like a match. June dropped the letter. The fire. The fire had happened late that night. Back in 1961. After the dance. An electrical short had sparked behind the stage. No one was hurt, but part of the back wall had burned. They rebuilt, quietly. The news never made it big, just a footnote in a sleepy town. But something about the letter felt wrong. Like a warning. June called Earl. "Meet me at the studio," she said. "Is everything all right?" "No." She hung up. When he arrived, she was already there. Standing near the old trophy case. He saw the envelope in her hand. "What's that?" She handed it to him without a word. He read it. Once. Twice. Then went pale. "I thought no one knew." June's throat tightened. "Knew what?" He sat down. Hands trembling. The fire wasn't an accident. Earl took a deep breath. Like a diver before the drop. "That night. I was angry. Margaret left me alone for almost an hour. I saw you. With your hand in his. Laughing. You thought I was with Walter. I knew you were." June's eyes burned. "You barely even knew me." "I knew enough. Something in me, young, foolish, stupid, snapped. I went to the back to get some air. Found a bottle. An old prop torch for a Charleston routine. I thought, maybe if the night ended early, people would leave. And I wouldn't have to watch." He buried his face in his hands. "I knocked it over. Didn't think it'd catch. But it did." June stepped back. "You started the fire." "I didn't mean to. I swear. I panicked. Pulled the alarm. Helped people get out. But I never told anyone." June couldn't breathe. "And Walter knew?" Earl nodded. "I think so. He was back there too. I saw him just before the flames rose. He looked at me like he knew exactly what I'd done." They sat in silence. The ghosts in the walls were louder than ever. Finally, June spoke. "I loved Walter. I did. But part of me always wondered, what would have happened if I had turned around." Earl looked up, tears in his tired eyes. "I loved Margaret. But some nights. I dream of you. They didn't touch. Didn't cry. They just sat there. Two old hearts. Two heavy pasts. And the crackling echo of a fire they never spoke of." But then Earl reached into his coat pocket. "I wasn't going to show you this." He pulled out an old photograph. Singed at the edge. Faded almost to white. But in the center, two blurred faces. His and hers. June and Earl. Mid-spin. Smiling. "We did dance that night," he whispered. "If only for a moment." June touched the photo with trembling fingers. "How is this possible?" Earl shook his head. "I don't know. But someone wanted us to remember." The next morning, the rain turned cold. Not sharp like needles, heavy, like sorrow that had waited too long to fall. June and Earl met at dawn, outside the studio doors. No music this time. No students. Just silence, and something else hanging in the air. A presence. Earl held the photo tight in his coat pocket. June carried the letter from Walter. "Are you sure?" he asked. June didn't answer. She just nodded and stepped through the door. They didn't turn on the lights. They let the gray light of morning spill through the high windows and watched the dust dance through it like lost spirits. Earl walked to the mirror wall. The one where they'd both seen themselves, separately, unknowingly, for the first time in 1961. "Back here," he said. He tapped the frame near the edge. "That night, this panel was loose. I remember because I leaned on it and almost fell through." He pressed. It gave. With a creak like a groan from the bones of the building, the panel swung open. Behind it, darkness. June peered in. "You never told anyone." "I was ashamed. And scared." They stepped inside. The room was small. About the size of a janitor's closet. Smelled like mildew, old wood, and secrets. There was a chair. A coil of burned rope. A rusted switchboard from when the place still had manual lighting. And on the back wall, something carved into the wood. "June. I saw you." You looked back. June's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. She remembered. A flash. A second. A heartbeat just before Walter took her hand. She'd turned. Saw a man near the punch table. Gray suit. Looking right at her. "I did see you," she whispered. Earl's knees buckled. They sat on the floor, the dust coating their coats, and said nothing. Then June spotted something under the chair. A box. Flat. Wooden. Locked. "No key," Earl muttered. But there was something else scratched into the top. Im plus JH. June 3, 1961. For when it's time. She traced the initials with her finger. "Earl Madison Halperin," she whispered. "What?" That was Walter's middle name. Madison. Earl looked at her. "My middle name's Halperin." The silence twisted. We gave them our names." It hit them at the same time. The box wasn't from them. It was for them. But someone, Walter. Margaret, had left it behind. A message that had waited more than 6 decades. They took the box to the locksmith the next morning. No ID. No explanation. Just an old box and older faces. The man didn't ask questions. Just nodded, worked for 15 minutes, then popped the lock with a soft click. Inside. A folded letter. A gold key. A black and white photo of a door. No address. No explanation. Just one word written on the back. Remember. They took the letter first. June read it aloud, her voice trembling. "If you found this, then the world has turned far enough for the truth to matter. We watched you. Not in the way that sounds. We watched your lives because we loved you. We knew, even then, that there was something unfinished. We couldn't stop the storm that was coming, but we could leave you a map. There's a room. There's a place only the two of you will remember. Use the key. You'll know where to go. And when you get there, just dance. Please, just dance. For all the moments you lost." There was no signature. But the writing, it was Margaret's. And Walter's. Each had written half. Together. They looked at the photo again. A door. A small one. Round knob. Etched trim. June stared. "I know that door." Earl turned to her. "It's in the attic of the studio. Back behind the old wardrobe. We used to store costumes up there." They left right then. No words. No time. The storm could wait. Up the stairs. Past the dusty shelves. Into the attic. And there it was. The door from the photograph. Earl took out the key. It fit. Inside, the room was empty. At first. Then June flipped the light. Music started. Old music. Soft. Slow. A record player in the corner, spinning a vinyl labeled, "For Them." The walls were covered in photographs. Of couples. Dancers. Students from decades ago. And in the very center. One photo. Of them. June and Earl. Dancing. Smiling. Frozen in time they didn't remember. June gasped. I don't remember this being taken. I do, Earl said, voice cracking. I remember turning. Just for a second. And I stepped forward. Before Margaret pulled you. Before Walter reached for you. They turned to each other. And for the first time in 64 years. They danced. No steps. No rhythm. Just movement. Two old souls. One unfinished story. Now, at last. Complete. They didn't speak as they danced. Didn't need to. The music played, soft and grainy, like a memory half remembered, and the room faded away. The years fell off their shoulders like coats in spring. June leaned her head against Earl's chest. I used to wonder, she whispered, what it would have felt like. Just once. To hold you. Earl's breath caught. I used to wonder what it would have been like to never let go. Outside, the storm passed. Rain slid down the attic windows like tears too tired to fall. But inside? It was warm. Like a home that had waited its whole life for someone to return. When the song ended, Earl stepped back. June's hand lingered on his chest a moment too long. They turned back to the wall, the photographs, the records, the box. And one final thing they hadn't seen before. A small drawer under the record player. Earl opened it. Inside. A second letter. Smaller. Thinner. Written in the same hand. But this time, addressed to both of them. To June and Earl. If you're reading this, then you chose the truth. Not the easy road. Not the quiet one. But the honest one. We didn't want to keep this from you. But love, it's complicated. Sometimes the people we choose aren't the ones who were meant to stay forever. Sometimes, they're just the ones who held the door open long enough for us to find our way back to the right room. Walter saw it first. I was too proud. Too afraid. But we both knew, your story wasn't over. We took turns watching that attic door. Keeping it safe. And when we grew old, we left this behind, just in case you ever came looking. You weren't meant to end in goodbye. You were meant to begin again. With love. Margaret and Walter. The silence that followed was like a cathedral, sacred and still. Earl sat down slowly. The weight of it all pressed into him. But it didn't crush him. Not this time. June stood at the center of the room, eyes closed. She whispered something. What was that? Earl asked gently. She smiled. A promise I made when Walter died. That if life ever gave me one more chance, just one, I'd stop running from it. She opened her eyes. And looked at him. Let's go somewhere. They left the studio that night and never looked back. Traded the Midwest for the coast. Found a little cottage near the water. With creaky floors and a porch swing. He painted. She planted. They took long walks and longer naps. And every Thursday, they danced in the kitchen, barefoot, laughing, offbeat and off-key. People in the village thought they were newlyweds. And in a way, they were. Because sometimes, the beginning doesn't happen when you're young. Sometimes, it waits for you to be ready. Sometimes, it waits for you to come home. Earl passed away 5 years later. In his sleep. Peaceful. A Frank Sinatra record playing low in the corner. June found him with a smile on his face and one hand still resting where she had held it last. She buried him on a hill overlooking the sea. And every week after that, she came and played him a song. Sometimes, she danced. One afternoon, as she sat on the hill, a young woman approached with a little boy in tow. "Excuse me," the woman asked. "Is this the place with the love story?" June smiled softly. "Oh, honey," she said, eyes shining, "this is the love story." The wind picked up. The grass bent like it was bowing to something it couldn't see. And as June closed her eyes, she whispered the last line of the song that had once changed her life. Wherever you're going, I'm going your way. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.